Made in Italy. Look at this terrible poster, by the way. Jesus Christ almighty. I mean, it looks like something done in Photoshop by an intern in 3 minutes. Anyway, the film stars Liam Neeson and his actual son, Michelle Richardson. The pair plays father and son who go to Italy, to Tuscany to be specific, in order to renovate an old family house before selling it, so that the son can get enough money to buy back an art gallery from the parents of his soon-to-be ex-wife. It's not going to be easy though, because on the one hand the house is in terrible condition, on the other the relationship between the two men is strained, with the father being sort of this outcast from life and from his work as painter, after as we soon realize, the tragic death of his wife some years prior. Fortunately, the pair may find some allies in Italy itself, because the son meets a lovely restaurant owner named Natalia, and the chemistry between the two may lead somewhere. So, from the trailers, the film presented itself as a romantic comedy, which is not exactly accurate. There is, of course, this romantic subplot, but it's very much secondary or even tertiary to what the film is actually trying to be. And that, to me, is first and foremost an advertisement of Tuscany as a tourist and living location. The movie does not shy away from flaunting these wide shots of the rolling hills with trees, vineyards, and villas. It shows us the lovely atmosphere of the Italian towns and the culture focused on spending time in the evenings, primarily with one's family. To be honest, even though it's such blatant marketing, because part of the movie producers was the Tuscany government or whatever, I'm kind of willing to forgive it, because Tuscany is truly magnificent, and if you're shooting right there on location, it would be a waste not to show all of it. Secondly, what Made in Italy is a story about mishandling grief, about trying to bury your feelings deep inside instead of processing them, about parenting mistakes and regret, and finally getting closure and hopefully moving on after such tragedy. That, of course, all has to do with the death of the mother, as we learn more and more about the event over the course of the film. And some of the points that the movie tries to make are absolutely valid, and it raises interesting arguments about how sometimes, people, for example, people teach their sons to be unfeeling and cold, mistaking those qualities for manliness. Problem for me, though, is that the script is atrocious and the dialogue itself even worse. As good as the movie's arguments are, they are phrased in such unsubtle and crude ways that you feel disrespected as an audience. There is nothing left for us to figure out on our own. Every single thing is spelled out loud and hammered home. The characters don't act their feelings out. They say them. They straight up say how they feel and what they think at any given moment. It's really poor writing, and it did take away most of the joy I had from watching the Tuscan hills basked in the sun. Now, I want to make it clear that the actors themselves are pretty good, actually, and to me it looks like they are trying their best. They're doing everything in their power to save the script, but there's only so much they can do. Also, I have learned that this must have been a very personal film for Liam Neeson and his son, because Liam's wife also died tragically back in 2009. And apparently Liam is still dealing with grief to this very day. And as I've learned from a recent interview, he basically his entire career since then, which consisted in large part of starring in poorly made action movies that were trashed by critics, can basically be explained by him accepting every single possible job just so he can be out of the house and not having to sit there alone thinking about his wife. It is pretty heartbreaking, honestly, and in light of this, I am of course willing to give Liam Neeson's role choices much more of a break. But as a closing point, as much as this movie may have been important and cathartic and helpful to Liam Neeson, there is that thing called the death of the artist. Once a piece of art is out there in the world, the artist ceases to matter, really. Now it is up for the audience to decide the worth of that piece for themselves. And unfortunately, the worth of Made in Italy, from the perspective of an audience member, is not very high. It's a film shot in gorgeous places, and it tries its hardest to be an important lesson about processing grief, but the execution is rather average.